Tommy stared at the rusty truck. It was a relic of better days, a time when his family's future seemed more secure. It was more than just a hunk of metal, it was his family's lifeline. Every dent and scratch told a story of hard work and perseverance. His dad used it for work, hauling goods to make ends meet. The truck had been a faithful companion on countless journeys, braving harsh weather and rough roads, but now the truck sat silent, its engine refusing to roar. It was as if the heart of their livelihood had stopped beating. Tommy's dad had thrown his hands up in despair. He had tried everything he knew, but the truck remained stubbornly lifeless. Times were tough, money was tight, and the weight of the world seemed to rest on that broken-down truck. The family's financial struggles were mirrored in the truck's deteriorating condition. Tommy, just 13, felt a surge of responsibility. He knew his family was counting on him, and he was determined not to let them down. He wanted to help, to be the man of the house, even if it felt too soon. The weight of this new role pressed heavily on his young shoulders. He grabbed a wrench, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. He had seen his dad work on the truck countless times, but doing it himself was a different story. He tinkered under the hood, the smell of oil and gasoline filling his nostrils. Each turn of the wrench was a step into the unknown. Hours passed, frustration mounting with each failed attempt to breathe life back into the engine. The more he tried, the more elusive the solution seemed. His hands, smeared with grease and grime, trembled with the effort. The physical toll was nothing compared to the emotional strain. He felt tears welling up, threatening to spill over. The frustration and sense of helplessness were almost too much to bear. He felt so small, so ill-equipped to handle this burden. The enormity of the task at hand made him feel insignificant. The truck, a symbol of his family's struggles, seemed to mock his efforts. It stood as a silent reminder of their precarious situation. Being a man, he realized it was harder than it looked. The responsibilities, the expectations, the pressure, it was all so overwhelming. But in that moment of reflection, Tommy also felt a spark of resolve. He knew he couldn't give up. His family needed him, and he would find a way to fix that truck, no matter how long it took. "Having a bit of trouble there, son?" A gruff voice startled Tommy. Old Joe, his neighbor from across the street, stood leaning on his cane, a knowing smile on his weathered face. Joe had a way of showing up just when you needed him, like a guardian angel in worn-out overalls. Tommy wiped his eyes, embarrassed to be caught crying. He explained the situation, his voice cracking with a mixture of frustration and shame. Old Joe listened patiently, his blue eyes twinkling with understanding. "You know, fixing a truck is a lot like fixing life," Old Joe said, his voice raspy but kind. "It takes more than just strength. It takes know-how, patience, and a whole lot of heart." Tommy looked at Old Joe, his words striking a chord deep within him. It wasn't about being the strongest or the toughest. It was about using your head, your heart, and your hands to solve problems. Maybe true manhood wasn't about age, but about attitude. Old Joe, with surprising agility, lowered himself onto a crate, his eyes scanning the engine. He pointed out a loose wire, a clogged filter, explaining each step with the patience of a seasoned teacher. Tommy listened intently, soaking up every word, every gesture. Together they worked on the truck, their hands moving in sync. Old Joe's guidance was more than just mechanical, it was a lesson in life. He talked about the importance of responsibility, of never giving up, of facing challenges head-on. "A real man," Old Joe said, wiping his brow with a rag, "doesn't shy away from hard work. He steps up, gets his hands dirty, and does what needs to be done." As they worked, Tommy felt a sense of purpose wash over him. It wasn't about being a hero. It was about being there, being reliable, being a part of the solution. The grease under his fingernails, the sweat on his brow, it was all a badge of honor, a testament to his growing understanding of what it meant to be a man. Section 4. A father's scorn, a neighbor's defense. The sound of the engine, sputtering back to life, was a symphony to their ears. It was a crisp autumn morning in the small Midwestern town, where the leaves painted the streets in hues of gold and crimson. The air was filled with the scent of fallen leaves and the distant hum of life going on as usual. Tommy felt a surge of pride, a sense of accomplishment that ran deeper than any schoolyard victory. He had spent hours under the hood, his small hands working diligently, guided by the knowledge he had painstakingly gathered from books and observation. This was more than just fixing a car. It was a testament to his perseverance and growing skill. But his joy was short-lived. The triumphant moment was fleeting, as a shadow of concern crossed his face. He knew his father would soon discover what he had done, and the thought filled him with a mix of dread and anticipation. His father emerged from the house, his face etched with worry. The man had been dealing with the stress of a broken car for days, and the sight of Tommy near it only added to his anxiety. Seeing Tommy huddled under the hood, his expression morphed into one of anger. The frustration of the past few days boiled over, and he couldn't contain it any longer. "What do you think you're doing?" he barked, his voice laced with frustration and fear. "You're just a boy!" His voice echoed through the quiet street, a harsh reprimand that cut through the morning air. "You'll only make things worse," he continued, his tone a mix of anger and desperation. Tommy flinched, the words stinging like a slap. He had hoped for a different reaction, a glimmer of approval, but instead he was met with harsh criticism. He stepped back, his shoulders slumping in defeat. The pride he had felt moments ago was now replaced by a deep sense of disappointment. But before he could retreat into himself, before the weight of his father's words could fully crush his spirit, old Joe stepped in, his voice firm yet respectful. The elderly neighbor had been watching from his porch, and he couldn't stand by any longer. "Now hold on a minute," he said, his tone calm but authoritative. He had seen enough to know that Tommy's efforts were genuine and commendable. He placed a reassuring hand on Tommy's shoulder, a gesture that spoke volumes. It was a silent affirmation of the boy's worth and effort. "The boy's not making trouble, he's solving it," old Joe continued, his eyes meeting the father's with a steady gaze. "He's got more grit and determination in his little finger than most folks twice his age." Tommy looked up, encouraged by old Joe's words. The determination in his eyes was unmistakable, a silent vow to prove his worth. Tommy's father looked from old Joe to his son, his anger momentarily replaced by confusion. He had never seen his son in this light before. His expression softened, the anger giving way to surprise. He began to see the situation from a different perspective. He saw the determination in Tommy's eyes, a fierce resolve that he had never noticed before. The grease stains on Tommy's hands were a testament to his hard work and dedication. They were marks of effort, not of mischief. A flicker of understanding, of pride, softened his features. For the first time, he saw his son not as a boy who needed protection, but as a young man capable of facing challenges head-on. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Tommy's shoulder, mirroring old Joe's earlier gesture. "Maybe I underestimated you," he said softly, a hint of pride in his voice. Tommy looked up, a smile breaking across his face. The moment of scorn had transformed into a moment of recognition and mutual respect. Old Joe nodded approvingly, a satisfied smile on his face. He had seen the potential in Tommy and had helped bridge the gap between father and son. In that small Midwestern town, amidst the falling leaves and the hum of daily life, a bond was strengthened, and a young boy's determination was acknowledged. It was a day that would be remembered, not for the scorn, but for the defense and the understanding that followed. Section 5. The storm within, the storm outside. Later that night, a fierce storm raged outside, the wind howling like a wild beast, and the rain pouring down in torrents, drenching everything in its path. The storm outside mirrored the turmoil of emotions within Tommy. He stood by the window, watching the lightning illuminate the dark sky, each flash reflecting the conflict in his heart. He lay in bed, listening to the wind howl and the rain lash against his window pane. The rhythmic pounding of the rain seemed to echo the pounding of his own heart, filled with uncertainty and fear. His father's words, though harsh, had struck a nerve. They lingered in his mind, replaying over and over, each repetition deepening the wound. Was he really just a boy playing at being a man? He sat on the edge of his bed, deep in thought. The question gnawed at him, making him question his own worth and capabilities. Was he strong enough, brave enough? Could he ever live up to his father's expectations? Suddenly he heard a loud crash. The sound jolted him out of his thoughts, his heart racing as he tried to identify the source of the noise. His father yelled from downstairs, his voice filled with urgency and distress. Tommy's instincts kicked in and he knew he had to act. Rushing down, Tommy saw his father struggling to secure the shed door which had blown open in the wind. The storm was relentless, threatening to rip the door off its hinges. The wind howled and the rain battered the shed, the door flapping wildly as if it had a life of its own. The storm was a formidable opponent, and it seemed determined to wreak havoc. The storm was threatening to rip it off its hinges. The metal creaked and groaned under the pressure, and Tommy knew they had to act fast. Without hesitation, Tommy grabbed a rope. His hands moved with a sense of purpose, driven by the need to protect his home and family. He knew what he had to do. With determination in his eyes, he ran outside, the wind and rain lashing against him, but he didn't falter. He secured one end of the rope to the door handle and the other end to the sturdy oak tree in their yard. The tree stood firm, a symbol of strength and resilience. His father stared at him, speechless. In that moment, he saw his son in a new light, not as a boy, but as someone capable and strong. As Tommy battled the wind and rain, his small frame a testament to his unwavering resolve, he felt a sense of purpose and strength he had never known before. In that moment, Tommy wasn't a boy trying to prove himself. He was a young man acting on instinct, driven by a deep-seated desire to protect his family and his home. His actions were not just about securing a door, they were about proving to himself that he was capable, that he could rise to the occasion when it mattered most. He was a young man acting on instinct, driven by a deep-seated desire to protect his family and his home. In that moment, he found a strength within himself that he never knew existed. As the storm raged on, Tommy stood by the secured shed door, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. He had faced the storm within and the storm outside, and he had emerged stronger for it. Section 6. True Strength, True Grit. The storm raged on, but the shed door held firm against the onslaught. Tommy, soaked to the bone, stood tall, his chest heaving with exertion. As he looked at the secured door, then at his father, he finally understood. True strength wasn't about muscles or bravado. It was about courage, resilience, and a willingness to face any storm, both internal and external. It was about using your head, your heart, and your hands to make a difference, no matter how small. His father wrapped him in a hug, his embrace speaking volumes. "You did good, son," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Real good." In that hug, Tommy found the validation he craved. He realized that manhood wasn't a destination, but a journey. It was about learning, growing, and embracing the challenges that life threw his way. He might not have all the answers, but he was ready to face whatever came next with courage, compassion, and the grit of a man twice his age.